So Fablehouse is a magical adventure for 8 to 12-year-olds, and it's set in 1954, and it's set in Somerset. And um, it's not my original idea, but we'll move on to that in a bit. I'll explain a bit more about that as we go through. But yeah, so it's set in 1954, and it's about four kids, four brown babies who live in this orphanage. And the main character is called Heather. It's told from her point of view, and she's been around a few different kind of children's homes, and she's not really looking for any new friends at the moment. But she doesn't really have much of a choice when she meets three other kids, and together they find a black knight called Palamedes, who's kind of like out of time and out of his head a bit. They find him; he looks like he's been beaten up. And Palamedes tells them eventually that he's from King Arthur's court, and he was tasked with protecting a doorway to make sure the world kept safe, but that all the kids are in danger because the evil Fae are trying to overtake the world. So the kids, the Romers, they call themselves, Heather, Arlene, Nat, and Lloyd, they all join together with Pal to basically save Fablehouse and save their world.
When I was sent the PR, I noticed that it was described as an empowering read that shows all children have somewhere they belong. And then I read a little bit about yourself, and I wondered how the two connected.
Yeah, so I was born, I'm 47. Yeah, so I'll be 48 next month. I'll be 48 in June. And my mum is white and Jewish, and I don't know my dad. Like, I've never known my dad. So my mum thinks he's Jamaican, pretty sure he's Jamaican, although when I was about 20, she said that she wasn't sure it could have been one of two guys. So I've not ever had any luck in kind of trying to trace him or anything like that. Um, so yeah, so my mum was a heroin addict. So I was put on the, child in need register or whatever really early on when I was about 15, 16 months, I think. And I was in the care system up until I was 18. So, I mean, I left a foster home and lived on my own from when I was 17. But up until I was 18 is when the Cardiff Social Services were responsible for me. So yeah, and I bounced around really. It was the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So I was in one main children's home called Suffolk House that doesn't exist anymore. That was in Cardiff. But in all, I was in about 5 different foster homes. Some good, some bad, some very, very ugly. And kind of saw my mum for little bits. She might have turned up for a weekend here and there, but I wasn't really back in touch with my mum till I was in my late teens. Yeah, and as I said before, this project Fablehouse wasn't my original idea. So there's an amazing woman who has been in publishing for years, like 20 years, and she's a writer herself, called Jasmine Richards. And 4 years ago, she set up her company Story Mix. And I'd met Jasmine before, and she'd read my writing before on this weekend thing years and years ago. And I found her very inspiring. And she came to me a couple of years ago with this project saying, Story Mix is a company where I want black and brown kids to see themselves on the front cover of books. They need to know that they can be the hero of their own story. And that really struck me because when I was growing up, there was never any representation in books at all. And it's through being published in the first place that I've come to kind of understand any history really, and my mixed place in it, and kind of educate myself. I think the last sort of 5 years have been really major in that way. Yeah, so when she kind of came to me and told me about this project, she knew that I'd grown up in the care system because that's what she'd read before, a book that I'd been trying to get published for ages about being in the care system. Yeah, so it was her idea about the 4 kids and the knight because she's really into Arthurian myth. But we both really love real history that can be inspirational. And she told me about this book she'd read called Britain's Brown Babies by a woman called Lucy Bland. And I read that book as well. And was just blown away by it, that there's this whole area of history that I had no idea about, never been taught about, and just found loads of parallels with, my own background, not knowing my dad, but just that whole thing of, the white women, the American GIs and all these brown babies. There were thousands of them, shipped across different orphanages. And I found it really moving. And as soon as I started to write, I was really able to kind of like, it was really healing in a lot of ways. I managed to put loads of my kind of experiences and background into the book and the characters. So that's where it kind of became quite a beautiful, a collaborative, but a very beautiful thing that has ended up being deeply personal. But yeah.
Jasmine Richards, that name crops up again. I must meet this woman. Everybody who speaks of her speaks in the way that you did. You know something? I'm listening to you connect, how you've brought your story with the inspiration of Jasmine and the books that you've read to market through Fablehouse. What I'm missing is where your love for writing came from. I mean, was that developed in those formative years, or is that something that came after? Tell me about it.
Yeah, no, I've always been a massive, massive reader. So when I was in care and I was really little, like 5, 6, how it used to work in the day was that prospective foster parents could come and like pick and mix, basically, right? I mean, this is how it was. We didn't know that was what was going on as kids, but we'd all be in a room, we'd all be playing with our toys or whatever, and just loads of visitors would come and have a look and maybe a bit of a chat with us, and then they could choose who they wanted to take home for tea to test them out. And me and a really lovely boy that I was really friendly with for years until he just vanished, because that's what happens when you make connections in care. People you care about just are gone next day. Me and another black boy, we just never got picked. We just never got to go for tea with these folks, like, ever. And I think unconsciously I kind of thought then, if I don't look the right way, we're talking 1980 in Cardiff. If I don't look the right way, I need to have something else about me. Do you know what I mean? I need to be really clever or really funny, or and I was a massive reader, and it took me away from what I was experiencing, my reality. There was a lot of, even when I went back for visits with my mum, like they'd try and do like weekend visits, there was a lot of neglect. There was, no food for days, weeks at a time, sitting in my own filth, whatever. There was a lot of that kind of thing because she was a junkie. And a lot of unsafety. But I can remember sort of being 7, 8, 9 and just obsessively reading, like, picking up a book and sitting there and disappearing into a world that I felt was more satisfying. You know what I mean? And when people ask me about it, they always like to use the word escape, like, you escaped your reality. And I've never really used reading like that. I don't use reading like that. I wasn't a big fantasy fan. I mean, I read Narnia, whatever, but I wasn't someone that was looking for a different world. I was looking for proof that the world could be a decent place. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's different. So yeah, I was looking for kind of hope that, okay, this isn't always going to be how it's going to be. Especially when I was like a bit older, like 10 to kind of 15 maybe. But there was no representation out there. So I was stuck with, the books that I was reading. I was stuck with Anne of Green Gables and, Another Orphan, but kind of inspirational stories, but very old fashioned, where things always kind of worked out in the end. I was always drawn to kind of hope. But I would read, kind of modern. I mean, Anne of Green Gables isn't modern, but you know what I mean? Like real settings. Just thinking that, if I can read enough and see enough different ways to be, then that gives me the hope that, I'm not always going to be in care, or I'm not always going to be in this family that doesn't want me, or whatever. Yeah, but I've always loved reading. And then writing, I think it can be like a natural development of that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was never, I actually wasn't someone that was like, oh, I want to write books. Like, I have to be a novelist. Like, that's not what I was into. I just liked telling stories. You know what I mean? And character and dialogue is everything to me. So I used to write short stories, but then I might write, monologues or, and that's the great thing about writing, isn't it? I mean, like, it's all still up, any form you want, it's all still up there.
Have you read Lem Cisse's My Name Is Why?
No,
You
because it's
have to
close
read it.
to home. Like,
No,
it's like,
yeah, I know. I'm asking because of the fact you touched on this area of which I going to lead me into my question. Really, this area of people being in yours or a similar circumstance left. Really, there's even another line which you describe. Well, it's described in the PR. I find children who are often on the outskirts of society, and so. Do you think that area, especially where mixed race people are concerned, has been explored enough, and that whole period of from when you were born up until now?
um, no, I don't think it has been explored enough at all, and
Mm,
primarily because it's like, I'm new to the publishing world, right? So I first got a book out in 2019, and I was approached for the project. So it's a commission, yeah. Someone asked you to write something. But before that, I hadn't even written for children, right? I'd been writing like maybe YA or adult short stories. Um, this book that I'd set in a care home that I'd spent 5 years writing myself didn't go anywhere. But it got some nice feedback, from editors or whoever, Emma writes well, whatever. Lovely. But, we don't want to publish this book because we've already got one about a care home. Like there's only one. Ridiculous. But I had then an amazing opportunity to write in a series about Black British history. I've always loved history, you know, recently have come to know much more, and chose to write about, Black Victorians, which was amazing research. Um, and thankfully, in the last few years, especially since Black Lives Matter, massively, you can really notice it in publishing. It's suddenly a thing. Like, let's elevate these voices much more, which is great on the one hand, but it does need to, it does need to be supported and extended and a proper commitment given to it. And with the care thing and mixed race experience generally, um, there's endless stories to be told because it's endless experiences of individuals. Do you know what I mean? So I have
yeah.
seen, there are a couple of memoirs that are on my list for reading soon. I haven't, I mean, obviously I know of Lem and I know of Alex Wheatle and Kate Massey. They've written some amazing stuff. Kit DeWall with My Name is Leon. I started off reading that and then I started crying. So I had to put it away for a bit, it's a couple of years ago. Because
Mm,
so it's that thing of all the different aspects of my identity, mixed race, but I've never grown up in that culture through no fault of my own. Jewish, I've never grown up in that culture. Do you know what I mean? All these different aspects, it's like obviously they define who I am, but I also don't want to be limited by them. So apart from this one novel, I hadn't written about being in care and I hadn't, been active in the community or anything like that on like Twitter or anything. And it wasn't really until that I had the sort of freedom, almost freedom by writing someone else's idea set in a different time. Do you know what I mean? That it gave me like almost the distance. It gave me a weird
hmm.
freedom to actually explore that kind of stuff.
It's that disconnect, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm so grateful to like Jasmine and just my own kind of, and I came across the Mixed Museum, their online museum, and met the woman who runs that, who is lovely. And there's all these stories, and yeah, I mean, I think hopefully, I'm hoping these stories do come out more, and people do really want to hear people's own experiences. And I think there's absolutely space and an audience and a market for it. But publishing is a particular kind of strange institution.
Well, that kind of takes me into my next question, and I know Rishi's going to jump in soon because I'm kind of stepping over my time. But I feel like I could really talk to you for another good half an hour. I've got so many questions, and we're going to set that up. But I see that you've got a Bachelor of Honours in Film and MA and an MA in screenwriting, right? So you kind of got it sewn up. You're going about it the right way. Build the notoriety, get the books out there. Then you hit them with the hard life story, then you turn it into a film because you're going to do the screenwriting. I think you're on the right path. It's all to come for you, Emma, really, isn't it?
That would be nice. That would be nice. I think I don't plan anything, right? I'm not someone that sets goals because I'm a bit scatty and I've not really been taught that. And also I'm a little bit like, if it's meant to be for you, it'll just, I do believe that things come time in a season. But yeah, I mean, I love character and dialogue. And before books even were an option, I was like, I would like to write for TV. I want to write, I want to be unknown. I want no one to know who I am. I just want to do the writing. It's not about me as a face or a personality. We've all got TV shows, and apart from like one or two people, nobody knows who writes those. Do you know what I mean? You just enjoy the program. But yeah, I have started to think generally more about there's no end with writing, is there? Do you know what I mean? Like I'd love to try stuff I've never tried before. I think you can always grow. So yeah, I'm excited. Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean it. I mean it. It's all in front of you, it sounds like, to be quite honest with you. And in terms of you being scatty and not being taught all of the habits that I guess are inherently a part of success, just sounds like you've got some exciting things to learn moving forward. To me, Emma, that's all it sounds like. Yeah. So to get cracking. Back to the book, right?
Yeah.
Fablehouse. Is it going to be a one-off or Jasmine Richards? I've heard the name, so I know she likes a series. Is there another couple in the pipeline? Talk to me.
It was it was signed as a two book deal. So right now I'm editing book 2, which is great fun. Yeah, so it's 2 books. So one is out, first one's out 8th of June, and book 2 is out next April.
Okay. Well, that's a bit of an exclusive. Thanks for sharing that with us. Listen, is there anything else, because I've got another couple of minutes, I've been told. Is there anything else you want to share with us, about the whole process of putting this together and just where you would like to go? I know you said you don't plan anything, but if you had full control, what would come next after this? After the PR run and after this has sold millions of copies, won the awards, all of that, what would come next?
Well, I mean, writing for children is a massive privilege. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm hoping all kids, but especially black and brown kids, especially kids who might not, live at home or be with their parents or have any tricky circumstances. I really hope that they can see themselves kind of reflected in this book, and that they know that their own special kind of gifts are gifts, and that there is a power with whatever areas that they may struggle with. Do you know what I mean? Like, and if I could control what was happening next, I really like working collaboratively. I don't know. I want my fingers in all the pies, but I'd love to like write write with TV or like a writer's room. I know it doesn't really exist over here in quite the same way it does in the States. In the States, it always sounds super romantic, doesn't it? Like coffee and cake and 10 of us sitting around telling stories. I love the sound of something like that. But generally, it's just to keep connecting with people. I love meeting people. I love listening to people's stories. I like being inspired by real life to then produce something. Yeah, so I'm happy whatever.
Where can people follow you, find out more about you on social?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at, I don't know what my handle is. Twitter's the one I use the most, I think, because it's words, so it's the easiest. Do you know what I mean? Even though I know whatever Elam's doing to it is like is soon gonna go. But yeah, I'm EL_Norry writer, I think, on Twitter. Yeah, EL_writer. I'm on Instagram with the same handle, but I'm terrible at Instagram. Like, I'm not even joking. I tried to post a story last night, posted the same thing 3 times, just with different typos in it. Like, I don't know what I'm doing with that. And I don't do anything else because it's a big time suck, and usually it always makes us feel a bit bad about ourselves, even if we try and tell ourselves different. I prefer real people, real world. But yeah, I've got a website that probably needs updating. But yeah, Emma Norry. I'm out there. You can find me.
Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it, Emma. Good luck. Right.
Thank you for yours, Joel. Thank you very much.